Welcome, everyone. I'm Ragi Mahil, Head of Product Marketing Advanced Analytics at Google Cloud. I will be your moderator today for our Women in Data and Analytics panel discussion. Before we begin, though, let's take a moment to underline the importance of this topic. We are in an era where data and AI are seen as a business advantage. And having diversity of thought in that data that we're feeding AI and machine learning algorithms is super important. It's important to reflect the true society it serves as it becomes embedded in everyday life around us, touching how we work, how we purchase, and how we communicate. Yet, research released by the World Economic Forum suggests women account for only 26% of all data and AI positions in the workforce. 26%. During the next 30 minutes, we will explore ideas on how to advance women to increase diversity in AI development to deliver equitable outcomes. Our distinguished panelists will share their experiences that have led them to their chosen career pathways. They will share how they are influencing change within their own organizations. And finally, we will discuss viable calls to action for organizations, leaders, and aspiring women in data and analytics. So let's dive in. I want to begin by introducing our panelists. My first panelist is Grace Lee, who was appointed Senior Vice President, Chief Data and Analytics Officer in October 2021 at Scotiabank. In this role, she is responsible for enabling and delivering impactful data and analytics solutions across the business that drive customer value, operational efficiencies, and risk-adjusted return. As a seasoned analytics professional, Grace is an advocate for innovation and business transformation. Next, we have Barbara Liesenfelt. I hope I said that right.
You did.
Who is the head of data engineering and technology services at Intercontinental Hotel Group. Having been with IHG for more than 21 years, Barbara leads the data engineering team within IHG's technology services organization, building data solutions and enabling data platforms for the enterprise. Welcome, Barbara. And of course, we have Natalie Bowman, who is the Managing Director for Product and Design at Alaska Airlines. Natalie oversees all guest-facing digital touchpoints for the 5th largest airline in the US. She serves on boards of multiple nonprofits and industry orgs. Welcome, leaders. During the introduction, we heard your current roles and the places you work. But in your own words, how did you begin your career in data analytics? Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to go.
All right, let's go, Barbara.
So when I first came out of college, and I had a computer science economics degree as well, I worked for a bank, and we were in a sort of management trainee program where we rotated through various departments. And in one of the organizations that I worked in, this is going to date me, but this was in the 90s, there were processes that were taking place that had a lot of inputs and outputs and approvals along the way, and it was super inefficient, lots of paper, literally paper. And I had some very basic database classes from school. Anyway, I went out and bought a book on Microsoft Access and built an Access database, and that was sort of where my passion for data first was born, I would say, within technology. And then at IHG, where I've been for 20 years, I started off as a hands-on analyst, and so there were pieces that I was working with data, and I kind of focused on that. That's just what I liked. And then I became a developer, hands-on developer, and then that has grown to the engineering team that I lead today.
Wow, impressive, impressive. So quite a few years, you kind of navigated your way, and you are where you are today for that reason. I would love to hear from Natalie and Grace as well.
Sure. So I have actually never held a data and analytics job title. My career, I started in marketing. I have a business degree, so the need for data analytics has existed throughout my career. But the role itself, I have always leveraged from a business side and have seen the value in data and analytics to drive change and do new projects.
That's great. And I know that your background is quite unique because you come from marketing and you made the changeover. I know we're going to hear a little bit more about that in our discussion. Grace, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I shouldn't really be here. Similar to Natalie, I didn't go into data and analytics on purpose. I was supposed to be a cellist. I was really into music. I'm very right-brained. In fact, anybody who knew me as I was growing up, they're bemused, perplexed, flabbergasted that I am in financial services in a data and analytics job. They think it's a face-off situation. It must be someone else. But one of the things I really liked about data and analytics when I finally experienced it for the first time is it's a great leveler. Having information means that you have a seat at the table. I started my career in consulting. And consulting is particularly, this is particularly true in consulting because you walk into a meeting, you're supposed to deliver value, and I know what I look like. So when I go into a meeting room, even now, people say, who brought the intern and why is she speaking? But as you go through introductions, even in a consulting environment, they say, oh, I'm so-and-so partner, I've had 30 years experience, and that's why you should trust me. I've had 25 years experience, you should trust me. So I'm in my first meeting, and I realize, oh, I've had 0 days experience. I don't get to say anything. But because I looked at 5 years of data as part of that first meeting, I had 5 years of experience. And people were interested in what I had to say, even though I don't look like a traditional expert. So, you catch the bug, and here I am. Yeah, people are very, very surprised.
Thank you for sharing, Grace, Natalie, and Barbara. We just really want to dive a little deeper into your experiences. So I think I'm going to move on to the next question. Why does diversity matter in data and analytics? I know you've lived it day in and day out through your own personal experiences, but now we're moving into algorithms. We're moving from data and analytics into machine learning models. So I would love to hear your perspective. I'm sure the audience would as well. Who would like to go first? I'm going to start picking.
I can speak. I think that diversity is really critical in anything related to data and analytics because it brings you a unique perspective and it removes some of the bias that exists, particularly if you're dealing with people who've been looking at the same data for 20 to 25 years. They're going to have a really ingrained bias there. And having diversity of thought and removing that, I think, really makes a huge difference in changing the experiences that you can deliver.
Before the other panelists go, can I pull on that a little bit more? Because I know you come from the experience side of things. Mm-hmm. So having that diversity in data, really representing the society that you're serving, what is it that you're very mindful of when you're pulling these experiences together for Alaska Airlines?
I think you have to be mindful of, for us, the guest experience, which is really critical because no matter what the data says, we don't want to make a decision that's going to deliver a poor guest experience. And so being the advocate for the guest experience is always really critical. You also have to understand the business. And so data and analytics tend to focus on a smaller scope of information and bringing in that diversity of thinking about the guest experience, thinking about the business goals that we want to achieve. It allows you to make better decisions because you're adding in levels of information.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So I certainly concur with all of that. And I think, being here this week, everybody must be seeing the same things I am, right? Everything is Gen AI, and Gen AI, more Gen AI. ML is coined now, right? Like that's all yesterday's news. And whilst I'm no expert by any means, it seems clear that there's going to be a focus on the ethical use of AI and the data that goes into it, the data that comes out, what an enterprise does with that data, and the circular kind of improvement of the models. And having the human voices there that bring the diversity of thought to those discussions and those decisions is going to be even more critical than it has been over the years for us to build maybe a more traditional data pipeline in my line of business, to have the voices in the room that represent diverse schools of thought, it just seems like it's going to be all the more critical. The human element is always going to be there, and we need to make sure that all of the humans are part of that leadership.
Yeah, I mean, data and analytics, we talk about as a technical capability, but honestly, it's one of the most human things in the world. I mean, we come to the planet fitted out with sensors, compute and storage, technology to do stuff with it. I mean, so we're all in data and analytics, taking in information, processing it, and making a decision. That's why we have storytelling, I think, therefore I am. I mean, it is human. And the idea that we wouldn't have humans and every stripe of human representing the way that we fit this into services or banking or some of the things that support the way that we live, it doesn't make any sense. I think making sure that people have access to it, understand it, value it is really important. And I think with automation, it becomes a little bit more terrifying to not have it as part of our the way that we think about a problem and the way that we make judgments, because when there's human intervention, you can train humans and they can make maybe 5 mistakes at a time. You do it wrong in automation, it's hundreds in a second. So we really do have to be extra mindful when we're moving at this kind of pace and with this level of maybe fewer opportunities to fix mistakes. I think it's even more critical to make sure that people are thinking about the problem in multiple ways and challenging each other to do it better.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you say that, because when you think about AI and ML, you're thinking about the data and the analytics, but as an organization, what about the cost associated of redoing things to make sure that you did go back after the fact and looked at all the diversity inputs, you asked the right questions? As an organization, I think that's one of the things that we don't think about. So I think it's something we should be moving forward. So thank you for sharing. So now, having said all that, we understand that human is still at the center of AI and ML. What are some of the actionable steps that an organization can take to drive change? What are some of the things that you're thinking about that can help other organizations learn from your experiences?
So I'm going to play a little bit off of there was somebody that was going to be on the panel today who, she's got COVID, she wasn't able to be here, but we had the pleasure of working with her over the last couple of weeks. There were a few things that she said that I think resonated with all of us, and hopefully a lot of the organizations in this room are doing things, starting with employee resource groups, right? Like those are things that really bring to the table some of the diverse pool of resources and talent that you have. And for various organizations supporting the ongoing career development of all resources, and in particular here we're talking about women in technology, and giving them a path forward, that's something that as an organization that we wish to do. And part of that is, I think, having very clear goals and making it something that is a headline, that it's not just something that we talk about as an afterthought. So.
Sure. I mean, diversity isn't a day, and it's not something that we can do in a panel, or we can have an event, or even ERGs, have their limits. I mean, it's really about establishing new norms and habits, and that's actions literally every day. I think we operate off of reward systems. So incentivizing either formally or informally, just making sure that people are including other people, and that's of D, E, and I. I think I is obviously the most important because it's action-oriented. But just making sure that every project that you have, every decision that's made, you are reaching out to people who don't look like you, don't think like you, don't have the same experiences as you do, and that ultimately leads, hopefully, to a better discussion, if not a better decision. And whether that's including women in the workplace or in your teams, or some of the programs that we've established around data ethics at the bank, I think are ways for us to check ourselves. Nobody intends to be a jerk. Nobody intends to exclude people, but sometimes we're just not in the right habits. Yeah. Again, data ethics is a really important topic for the industry, but it's really easy to publish principles. It's really difficult to make people think about it all the time. I mean, we've tried by embedding it into our process, into our governance structures, our controls, And even in the creation of this kind of framework or process, we included a lot of people. So it wasn't just risk or compliance that we're designing this. We actually brought in the data scientists. And we made them tell us what about it sucked so that we could fix it, so that it would be easier to adopt. It would be something that they valued. And now when you talk to them, it's very common for people to say, hey, you added process to my analysis. What are you doing? But in fact, we're finding that they're thanking us because they said, you know what, I never would have thought of that. And had I published a model that had that bias in it, I would feel terrible. So it's actually a really good way to engage in the topic in a constructive and kind of operational way. And hopefully that leads to better habits overall.
Absolutely.
I think from Alaska's perspective, I'm lucky to work in a very female-friendly culture. I'm here with 4 other leaders, and they're all women. And so I think finding a culture where that is less of an issue for you and you can really grow into it is very important, and they are out there. And really having that clear vision of where you want your project or to help the company go, and repeating that vision over and over. And as you said, data is such a good leveler. It does give you a better seat at the table. It gives you more of a microphone, but it's on you to keep repeating that over and over so that people really absorb what you're trying to achieve. And it takes a lot of patience to get to where you want to go. But you will get there.
Just on that, so that question was around what the organization can do to drive the change. But I think there's a big piece from an individual perspective, and I'm happy to see a lot of men in the room as well as women. And I think there are things that our male allies can do to help individuals, women in day-to-day, I don't know, I've been in many meetings where I feel like I hear a voice in the room who has something good to say, and they're talked over. Usually not me, just that's not the way I roll. But it's that there's voices that are talked over, and I think it's important for everybody in the room to stop and try to call out and say, hey, it sounds like so-and-so had something important to say there, and make sure that their voices are heard. And that's something that I would say everybody can do at an individual level, and in particular, I think, again, having male allies in the room that see that and make that a priority so that becomes normal, and that those voices of some of the people, especially in the technology space, who maybe are not looked at as the ones having the knowledge, are given the time to speak, because they do. So,
Such a great point. Actually, could we take a moment and just applaud all the men that came here to support us today? So our final question will be that women often dismiss themselves before even attempting a challenge, to your earlier point, right? Because they doubt their abilities. And in some cases, I know I've had this as I've grown through my career, the imposter syndrome, which leads to a lack of confidence. What advice do you have for other women who are thinking about this field, maybe a leader in this field, and men? What can we do to help them kind of move throughout this career in data and analytics?
I'll go first. We really have to stop telling women that there's something broken about them. And I know we never say it explicitly, but every single woman-related program that I've been to is around speak up more, or speak louder, or be more aggressive, or make sure that you're networking more. Effectively be more normal, and that usually means male. And I know that it's not universally male, but it is giving the signal to people that they need to fix themselves. And how could you not think that there's something broken? How could you not think that you're an imposter when people are constantly coaching you? So I would say that the best thing that you can do is just be comfortable in who you are, and don't listen when people say you need to be different. It's like, I get very, very passionate about this. But there are benefits to being different. Being flawed means you're human and you're empathetic. Speaking less means you hear more. It is very important that we actually have diversity at the table, and we can't do that if we're training the diversity out of people. So just because we look different, if we all behave exactly the same, it doesn't matter. So I would encourage you to just feel comfortable, include yourself your real self and stop trying to be someone else because you're really bad at being someone else. You're great at being yourself.
It also takes a lot of energy to try and be someone else. I think that you can spend a lot of energy trying to pretend or fit in with a different model of what a strong leader should look like. And for me, it's the work. It's do the work that gets you noticed. And if the work isn't in your purview, do it anyway. Beg for forgiveness later. Just make sure that you're always showing up, knowing more data. If everyone at the table knows 3 years, make sure you know 5 years. You really just have to make sure that you have that behind, because it really is, I think leveler is a great word. The equality exists when you're going back to the data and analytics, and so just leverage that. But don't change anything about who you are. I'm wearing sneakers because I can. Yeah. But 5 years ago probably would not have. And I think it's a really important, especially in this space. In tech, men are not changing who they are to be comfortable in the tech space at all. So women should definitely not.
Yeah, I think so. It's about knowing your value. And there's value to be brought from a diversity of resources and schools of thought. And not compromising on that, right? That the things that you bring to the table are the things that you bring to the table, and that there is value in that. There's certainly within technology and data in particular, there are so many opportunities. And we're here at this conference for the women and the men in the room. What's the great equalizer? It's the line for the bathroom, right? Have you ever been somewhere that there's a line queued out for the men, and then I thought I was in the wrong hallway the first day because I was like, oh, there's no women. Wait a minute. You don't need to look at the 26% of statistics to know when you're at a conference like this that there is a missing voice in the room, the collective room, right? And so for all of the women who are looking to, do the next thing for their career, et cetera, is know your value. It's important.
Great. So I had one thought, and I wanted to get your opinion. We never talked about it, we never rehearsed it, so it's okay if you feel like you don't want to answer. But one of the best advice I ever got, and it was from a leader at Google, he said, you need your personal board of directors. You need a personal board of directors who itself is very diverse. You need it from inside the company, you need it from outside the company, you need it from all around. What are your thoughts on that? Because if I was to do that, and let's say I was earlier in my career, what are the things I should look for as a woman in data and analytics that could help me? You can take a moment. I know that one's just a fresh question.
Yeah, I can answer. So for me in my career, networking and having mentors has not been a huge driver. So I think I'm in a rare position there. And part of that is if I were to go build a board of directors, I have a very different background. There's no one who has a background like mine that is going the direction I'm going. And so it makes it much more challenging to find the right people. What I have found to be more beneficial for me is reverse mentoring. So really building relationships with people who are earlier in their career, younger, because they have such a different perspective about what is happening and how things are going. And so it's actually worked better. If I were to build a board of directors, it would all be, people 30 and under. And I think that you get just that different type of thought.
That's refreshing.
Yeah,
interesting. What about you, Barbara?
I absolutely agree with that. And I think there are many paths to kind of achieving the things that we're talking about here today. I'm looking back, and I remember we did many years ago some sort of a 360 assessment where you got feedback from within the workplace, and I had in particular some feedback. Sometimes it's hard to hear the feedback, et cetera, about some of the things. And when I met with, and it was a woman, a leader in the HR organization, they paired you and had them review some of the things, et cetera. And I was kind of spun up about certain things that were said. And she said something that's always resonated, and I would put her in my board of directors, which is essentially, you have to be yourself. And so what you are is what you got where you are. Not everybody is going to agree with what, the way you are, the way you think, et cetera. And again, I think it, ties in with what Grace said, that you don't want a homogenous point of view in any way, shape, or form. And so the people around you that give you the feedback to make you comfortable in your own skin would be on my board of directors. As well as, absolutely, I think I will, again, pull the thread on the male allies. I think that there's leaders across the organization that can help grow your career. And then I think I'm also lucky at IHG. We have a lot of very strong women leaders, including my current one. And you benefit from that. And so I think part of that is just knowing that if I had that board when I was younger, I would want to see that. And I would hope that I could be part of that for other women as they're coming up in their careers. So.
I think my experience is very similar to Natalie's. I'm garbage at networking, and I have never once asked somebody for a conversation, let alone a mentoring relationship. It's just not how I'm wired, and I did just spend a lot of time telling everybody to be themselves. So I think when people ask me, how do you find sponsors, how do you find mentors, I think there is a degree of self-identification. As somebody has to care about you. You can't just ask somebody to care about you because they won't, and they won't challenge you the way that you need, and they won't give you the support or the advice or the sometimes harsh criticism that will help you. So I've been really fortunate in my life to have a bunch of people who raised their hands and said, hey, that thing that you're doing, you should stop. Or that thing that you're doing, you should definitely do more of. And when you said that, it really resonated with me. And without that, and without them self-identifying, it wouldn't have been quite as powerful, even if they said the same words. When people care about you, you can feel it. So find people who care. Find people who care enough to give you harsh or constructive feedback, and recognize it for the gift that it is. But don't stress too much about finding a certain number of people or a certain type of person. Just find people who genuinely care about you, have some degree of visibility into what you do and what you care about and who you are, and have them hold you accountable.
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for sharing.